What's up, guys? Part-time Gamer Dad here, and today I am going to give you my predictions for WWE's Saturday Night's Main Event. This is the 40th edition of that. It's in Atlanta, Georgia. Then we also have WWE Evolution. It's the second ever Evolution pay-per-view, all women's pay-per-view. And then we're also going to do my predictions for AEW All In from my hometown of Arlington, Texas. So with that all said, we got a lot of predictions to get through, so let's hop right in. Let's kick off with Saturday night's main event. This is coming out of Atlanta, Georgia. There's only 3 matches announced so far, so we're only going to predict on the announced confirmed matches for Saturday night's main event. And we're going to start with the returning Drew McIntyre taking on Randy Orton. I really do think this is the opportunity to re-solidify Drew McIntyre as a top star in the business. And it's not that he hasn't been presented as such, but we need to get this man on a winning streak so that he can take a title from a top contender, whether that's Gunther, whether that's Goldberg, don't think it will be, whether it's CM Punk, whether it's John Cena, Cody Rhodes, Seth Rollins, whoever the champion is, whether it's WWE or World Heavyweight, I can see Drew McIntyre being that guy who gets the title next because he was the one who held it down in the pandemic era of WWE. He deserves to get another title properly in front of fans. Let's talk about LA Knight, against Seth Rollins, Mr. Money in the Bank. This match has kind of been like developing out of basically nowhere ever since the Money in the Bank match occurred, a little bit before that, and I'm really here for it. This feud has been really fun. If you watch Monday Night Raw, after Seth and Penta put on a banger, by the way, LA Knight came in, hit that BFT on Seth Rollins, and escaped into the crowd. Crowd went nuts. I really think this is LA Knight's moment to shine. I think he needs this win, and I'm going to predict him to win. And I think we're going to have somebody like a CM Punk, who did not show up on Monday Night Raw, or Roman Reigns, who did not show up on Monday Night Raw, be the catalyst to get LA Knight the win against Seth Rollins, thereby setting up a match between probably Rollins and CM Punk at SummerSlam. Or if Reigns returns at Saturday night's main event, then we will see Seth Rollins versus Roman Reigns at SummerSlam. I think we're going to see LA Knight pick up the win, which I am all for. This man needs a significant singles win over a top star like Seth Rollins, so definitely here for it. And then we're going to finally hop into the most anticipated main event of all time. I'm, of course, kidding, but it is notable to say this will be Goldberg's final match. Now, of course, there's this narrative around, well, if Goldberg wins the World Heavyweight Championship, then he won't be retiring after this match, but he will be because he is going to lose to Gunther. Now, there is this element of, does Seth Rollins, after losing that match to LA Knight, or maybe he does win, but let's say he loses, and then he decides to cash in Money in the Bank at Saturday night's main event. I just don't see it happening. I don't see this being the way that he gets the world title, but it could be interesting if it did happen. I am going to predict that Gunther retains. Gunther's kind of the new Goldberg in a way, and that he is just hard to beat, and for a long time he had this significant winning streak. He's been a champion the majority of his WWE career. There's a lot of things that you can look at these two, and there's some correlations. And I think if you're going to send Goldberg out, this is a retirement match, Gunther is a great person to do that against because he's going to get at least some kind of decent match out of him. This will kind of wash away the feeling and bad taste of Goldberg versus Undertaker, or Goldberg versus Roman Reigns, or Goldberg versus Ziggler, or Goldberg versus The Fiend. Like, all these matches that just weren't good. I think this one has potential to be good. So Gunther to retain the World Heavyweight Championship. That is our Saturday night's main event predictions. Now let's hop into our WWE Evolution 2 predictions. So starting off, we have Jacy Jayne versus Jordynne Grace for the NXT Women's Championship. Jordynne Grace makes all the sense in the world. She is the one who should win. But I feel like she's also the most main roster ready, but they just called all these girls up onto the main roster. So I'm going to go against the logic of all this, and I'm going to say we are going to take Jordynne Grace. And I think it's going to be interesting. I think we're going to see a really interesting development from this. I think if Jordynne Grace can win, she's got a lot of fresh views that she can get into. So Jordynne Grace to win the NXT Women's Championship, but really not confident on that. Now let's talk about the Battle Royal. The Battle Royal to determine a number one contender for a women's championship at Clash at Paris, I believe. This one's difficult, because like there's this whole piece around Nikki Bella just came back. She was supposed to have a match with Liv Morgan, maybe the Bellas against Judgment Day at Evolution for the women's tag titles. I think there's a few options in this match, but I really am leaning towards Nikki Bella being the one to pick up the win, especially after the promo that occurred on Monday Night Raw. Like, it makes a lot of sense, but there's a big but. Do you think Nikki Bella is somebody who's going to stick around long term? Not necessarily. So I could see her losing. You also have a Stephanie Vaquer in there, and that's another possible option to win this match. But we're going to go with the nostalgia pop. We're going to go with the fact that she is still super over with the majority of fans, or at least the vocal fans and women and all that kind of girls and whatnot. So we're going to go with Nikki Bella, but I am very hesitant on committing to it. This one, though, it makes a lot of sense. It's a battle royal. No one loses any kind of like stock or standing within the company. We'll go with Nikki Bella to win the battle royal and then wrestle potentially Tiffany Stratton or whoever. Well, I might have just given away another prediction, or whoever wins the world championship match and the women's championship match in Evolution or even at SummerSlam. Because I think this one is happening at Clash of Paris. Whoever wins those matches goes on to wrestle Nikki Bella at Clash of Paris. All right, let's just go ahead and get it out of the way because I basically gave you my spoiler. I have Tiffany Stratton defeating Trish Stratus just because it just makes the most sense. Tiffany Stratton is like the new Trish Stratus. So yeah, TS beats TS. And I think it's going to be a fun match. I think it's going to be pretty, like babyface versus babyface. One person, maybe Trish, kind of goes heelish, or maybe Tiffany Stratton starts going back to her old ways. But I think it'll be a fun match. Nothing special. And I don't mean that as a knock. It's just like we all know the outcome is probably the most predictable, is that Tiffany Stratton wins. But I do think that there could be a tease of a cash-in from Naomi to try to get the title off of Tiffany Stratton, and then Jade will, of course, come in and save the day. So we have Tiffany Stratton defeating Trish Stratus to retain the title. Let's go ahead and just talk about Naomi versus Jade Cargill. So Jade Cargill has been on a tear. She defeated Naomi at WrestleMania. She won Queen of the Ring. She has the title match at SummerSlam. All things point to Jade Cargill winning this match against Naomi. I think you give Naomi the win. And here's why. If you give Naomi the win, it keeps her in the stratosphere, no pun intended, of the WWE Women's Championship. And also she could kind of hang this over Jade Cargill, saying like, I beat you. And not only did I beat you, I'm going to be the first to get to the Women's Championship before you are. And then she goes to cash in on Tiffany Stratton / Trish Stratus, however that works out. And then that's when Jade Cargill will stop her. So I have Naomi winning this. But again, this is one of those matches where it's just hard to predict. This is like Jordynne Grace and JC Jane. If I have to comes to shove, I'm going to say Naomi finally gets that win back against Jade Cargill. Let's talk about a triple threat. Let's talk about Becky Lynch versus Lyra Valkyria versus Bayley for the Women's Intercontinental Championship. Lyra's rough on the mic. If you saw the three-way promo between Bayley, Becky, and Lyra, it was a bit rough, especially when it came to Lyra. I think Bayley's going to come out of this the baby face. Lyra might end up becoming a heel. I think she'd be more interesting as a heel, but she did take both of them out. And that's kind of my problem with Lyra winning here, is that she stood tall. She took both Bayley and Becky out with Nightwing. I just don't see Becky dropping the title yet. I think there's got to be tension between Lyra and Bayley. They're both going to become so fixated on each other that Becky uses that to get the win. And then maybe we see a rematch at SummerSlam, because this really is a three-way story. You need all three parts of this story to be involved, all the components. So I'm going to say that we see Becky Lynch retain, and then we have a rematch, or we see Lyra versus Bayley properly blow off at SummerSlam. Okay, four-way match for the Women's World Tag Team Championship. So we've got the defending champs, the Judgment Day. the new member of Judgment Day, Roxanne Perez and Raquel Rodriguez, against NXT Sol Ruca and Zarya, against SmackDown's Charlotte Flair and Alexa Bliss, against Raw's Kabuki Warriors, newly reformed Kabuki Warriors, Asuka and Kairi Sane. I mean, I feel like we just had this huge, like, all the champs are here, right? We're all champs now with the Judgment Day. We got to keep that momentum rolling. I can see the Kabuki Warriors winning. And I can also see Charlotte and Alexa Bliss winning. But I do think we see Judgment Day retain, kind of solidifies Roxanne as like a true member of the Judgment Day and can get it done, especially after she just lost to Kairi Sane, which I think is also part of the reason I'm feeling like Judgment Day is going to win. Roxanne loses on the Raw before. They pick up the win when it matters most. I think we got to keep the story going with Judgment Day as all champs, especially Roxanne, because she's going to be the catalyst for Liv Morgan leaving the Judgment Day whenever she comes back and she heals up. We need a reason to keep Roxanne in Judgment Day, so what better reason than keeping the tag titles on them? So we're going to go with Judgment Day to retain, but there's a lot of teams in this match. A lot of teams that are very interesting. I don't see in a world where NXT's girls wins. Charlotte and Alexa, maybe. Kabuki Warriors, definitely an option, but I think the favorite here and the one that makes the most sense is the Judgment Day. Which leaves us with one more match, and that is Rhea Ripley versus Io Sky for the World Championship. Rhea's never beaten Io, ever. Just can't do it. And they played this whole kind of package around how Io's always had Rhea's number, and I think that genuinely is why Rhea Ripley's going to win. Rhea's going to win the World Championship. She's going to take it on. She's going to go to Clash at Paris and she's going to wrestle Nikki Bella, or she's going to wrestle Stephanie Valkyrie. Whoever wins that battle royal, Rhea Ripley is going to. She is over like Rover, as some people would say. Who says that? I don't know. I hear it sometimes though. It's kind of a dumb saying, but Rhea Ripley is huge. She's massive. She's a star among stars. She is probably the biggest women's star today, maybe ever. And I know that sounds crazy. I think she's bigger than Becky was when Becky was huge. So I'm going to go with Rhea, but it's coming from a place of Io has always beaten Rhea, and it is time for Rhea to beat Io. But Io's been an incredible world champ. She was an amazing WWE champ when she had that leading up to WrestleMania 40. And I think I think you say this for the main event. I think this needs to be the main event, and Rhea needs to have her hand raised at the end of it. And then we build towards Clash at Paris. I'd love to see Stephanie Valkyrie versus Rhea Ripley. They've been teasing it, but I do think we're going to get Nikki Bella versus Rhea Ripley at Clash at Paris, which leaves us with All In 2025. Let's kick off with Adam Cole versus Kyle Fletcher. Singles match for the TNT Championship. Man, this one's hard. Kyle Fletcher should win the title. He should win the title. But will he? Adam Cole has said, I'm going to be the champ for 2025 and beyond. I really think this is Kyle Fletcher's opportunity to really solidify himself, not just as a singles performer, but as somebody who could carry a title. And the Don Callis family is really hurting for titles, so I'm picking Kyle Fletcher. Yes, there will be shenanigans. I think Paragon and the Don Callis family will both get involved. But I think when it's all said and done, it's time to give Kyle Fletcher his flowers in the form of a title, and that's exactly what we're going to see at All In. The Women's Casino Gauntlet match, there's a lot of ways this could go. I just really feel like we need to see some kind of interesting development as a result. One of two things is going to happen. Either Chris Statlander is going to win, or we're going to see Camille return, because this whole storyline with Mercedes and Camille, it did not get fleshed out properly. If we could see Camille be the one to beat Mercedes, that would be huge. And I'm still having a hard time buying that Mercedes would beat Toni Storm for the title, but let's just say she does, then I think Camille wins. But if Toni retains, I think Chris Statlander wins. And then we see Chris Statlander turn heel. She can go after the title from Toni Storm. I think that would be a great development for her, especially if like Willow is in the running. And then because I just don't see Willow winning. However, we could run back Willow versus Mercedes. That was a huge feud. It's also kind of like how Mercedes started her AEW career proper, and there was all those matches beforehand in New Japan. So, but I'm just going to go out on a limb. I'm going to say Kris Statlander to win. This one's really hard and predictable. Those gauntlet matches are in the Casino Royale and all that stuff is always difficult. But we'll just say Kris Statlander because I think she deserves it, and I think it would be fun to see her win and turn heel. All right, triple threat match. We have the Hurt Syndicate versus Jet Speed versus the Patriarchy for the AEW Tag Team titles. Guys, what is this match? What is this match? At arguably the biggest show of the year, All In, for AEW, especially in Texas. It's just weird because, like, Hurt Syndicate is a legit team, but they weren't even the tag team in WWE when it was Hurt Business. And then we have Jet Speed, which is why were they the first team to be like presented as the contenders to the tag titles? And then we had the Patriarchy, and not even like Killswitch Nick Wayne. We have Nick Wayne, Christian Cage, and I know Killswitch has been going through some stuff, but I kind of want to say Patriarchy because it would make a lot of sense for them to get the tag titles off of Hurt Syndicate this way. But, I mean, can you really count out the Hurt Syndicate? Like, can you? Like, I would say for this match, we're going to see the Patriarchy win the match. We're going to see them win the tag titles. He's going to get Nick Wayne that tag team championship. And then after they lose, we're going to maybe see Patriarchy turn on Christian Cage. Maybe we get Edge and Christian out of that. Or maybe FTR jump the Patriarchy and then they take the titles from him, and then we have FTR versus Edge and Christian. I just see this coming back to Edge and Christian somehow with the tag titles, or Hurt Syndicate might win, and then Christian realizes he doesn't need a son, he needs a brother. Whoa. Big brain right there. And then we see Edge and Christian versus Hurt Syndicate. But for now, I'm going to go with my heart over my head. I'm going to say Patriarchy for the win. Now let's talk about a tag team match that I'm actually excited for. Swerve Strickland and Will Ospreay versus the Young Bucks, Matt and Nick Jackson. There's a stipulation here. I'm going to read it so I don't miss saying any of this stuff. If Will and Swerve lose, they cannot challenge for the AEW World Championship for a year. And if the Young Bucks lose, they will be stripped of their EVP positions. Y'all, So here's a couple things, right? Here's a couple things. You could very well make an argument for either of these things. I just don't think the Young Bucks are going to lose their EVP status. But I also just can't see a world where Will and Swerve don't have an opportunity to wrestle for the championship. So, and a lot of this is dependent on my prediction for Hangman versus Mox. And I crush AEW predictions, guys. I crush AEW predictions. This show is really hurting my brain. I'm going to say Swerve and Will get the win. I'm going to say they get the win thanks to potentially somebody returning or somebody debuting. Maybe we see Jack Perry come back and realize the error of his ways. Maybe Jack Perry screws over Swerve and Will. Maybe he's the one who helps them. But I think that it just makes a lot more sense to see the Young Bucks get their comeuppance. And this is kind of the Cody problem, right? Cody booked himself into a corner where he could never challenge for the AEW World Championship once he lost. I feel like we're in the same position now. I feel like it just makes a lot of sense to leave those two as options, because otherwise you go from All In to All In with no Swerve or Will Ospreay in the title picture whatsoever. I think we got to give this is going to be a very interesting overall pay-per-view with a lot of unpredictable winners. I think what makes the most sense logically long-term storytelling is the EVP roles mean nothing on screen, but you book yourself into a corner of not being able to have Will Ospreay or Swerve Strickland wrestle for the title, arguably your most two over guys in the company. You gotta let that still have an up. You can't do that. You can book yourself into a corner, you're gonna screw yourself in your company. So we're gonna give it to Swerve and Will Ospreay. I really hope that's the decision they make, because EVP's behind the curtain, totally fine. They don't need to be that in front of the curtain. I think it means nothing in terms of like the storyline element, especially when you consider like the top evil faction is Death Riders. The EVPs as the elite doesn't really matter anymore. The Young Bucks are the Bucks. They'll be around forever and ever. So give this one to Swerve and Will. Okay. Men's Casino Gauntlet. Let's just do it real quick because I don't really care, and it's for a future AEW World Championship match. I feel like the only thing that relatively makes sense is MJF because it's MJF, but it's not going to be MJF. But I think but it could be. It could be. Mark Briscoe is also announced. Mark Briscoe would be fun. Based upon my prediction for the end of this show, I am going to say MJF wins, causes friction between him and Bobby Lashley, especially after Hurt Syndicate lose the tag titles. And then he's like, well, why is MJF getting a title shot first? And then it causes Bobby Lashley to boot MJF out of Hurt Syndicate. So I'm going to go with MJF, but I just know that they're going to have somebody else win because MJF always wins these kinds of matches. But I can't think of anybody better. So we'll go with MJF. Oh, also the reason I think it should be MJF is you shouldn't just give this win to somebody who you know is going to lose. MJF could be a world champion any minute. So don't give it when they give it to people who are like a consummate mid-carder and you know they're not going to get the actual AEW World Championship, don't do that. Don't do that. It insults our intelligence, so don't do that. Okay. Unification title match. Kazuchika Okada, the Continental Champion, versus Kenny Omega, the International Champion. Running it back from New Japan Pro Wrestling. This was the match that almost made me spend the money and the vacation days to go back to Texas to see this match live in person in my hometown. But I just can't. I got 3 kids, got a new house. There's so many video games coming, guys. So many video games that I cannot justify it. But this match is going to be awesome. Oh, this one I cannot predict. I think whatever's going to happen, and let me see if this is true, but I think whatever's going to happen, whoever wins is going to get to determine what title they keep, probably. Continental, International, they're kind of the same thing. I want to say Okada has Kenny's number. Kenny just won the International Championship, and Okada's had the Continental title forever. If anybody's going to beat Okada, it's going to be Kenny. I just don't know if Kenny is going to beat Okada right now. But they also haven't done a whole lot with Okada. We had Okada versus Ibushi. That was great. I just don't see a world in which Okada loses the title, though. But it's Kenny freaking Omega. Now, here's the trick. If Young Bucks win their match, then I feel like Kenny has to lose this match because he's got to be the contender to the world title, whether it's Hangman or Mox. Or maybe Darby Allin comes back. He might actually come back. That might screw up a lot of my predictions, but let's just go off of the assumption Darby Allin doesn't return. Let's say Kenny Omega wins the match, and I'm going to be wrong about that. This whole pay-per-view is going to be just me taking L after L, but we'll say Kenny Omega wins the match and then decides to keep the International Championship going. I think if Kenny wins, he keeps the International title. If Okada wins, he keeps the Continental. But they like the Continental Classic. You know what? Yeah. We're gonna go Kenny Omega. We're gonna do Kenny Omega. I'm gonna stick with Kenny Omega. Yes. Timeless Toni Storm versus Mercedes Moné. Mercedes is going to win, I think, because it just makes the most sense. She's the belt collector gimmick right now. So I don't have much to say beyond that. It's just a straight up match. And it's time, I think, to give Mercedes the title. It makes the most sense. And she could, relinquish the TBS title. She doesn't have to lose it. She doesn't lose to lose it. Or maybe she just decides she's going to keep both belts and then she gets run ragged and then somebody takes off her because she's tired. She's worn out. She's burnt out. So we'll go with Mercedes to win. You can never count out Toni Storm, but I think it makes a lot of sense to have Mercedes win. She won the Owen Hart Cup and now she could take the title off of time with Toni Storm in front of a huge crowd. She can have whatever. She have the Ultimo Dragon pose with all the titles. The only thing that I am concerned about is somebody interfering in this match, like a Camille or somebody to return. But barring that, I think we would have Mercedes win. And then where does Toni Storm go from there? Mariah May is now Blake Monroe in NXT, so that storyline's kind of crushed. Mina Shirakawa could be the one to cause Toni Storm. That would be an interesting storyline. So I think whatever's going to happen, Mercedes Moné walks away with the title. Then a Texas death match. Hangman Adam Page versus Jon Moxley for the AEW World Championship. Ugh, I would love Hangman to win it. I would love Hangman to win it, and I just have a hard time. I think they want to have Darby Allin win it. I think they want Darby Allin to be the guy to defeat Jon Moxley. You know what? I'm going to go with my heart. I've already really screwed up this entire prediction list, so I'm just going to go with my heart. And I'm going to say Hangman Adam Page hits a buckshot lariat on Jon Moxley to win the AEW World Championship. Bring Darby Allin in. Then, oh, buddy, that title picture gets crazy. Omega, Hangman Adam Page, Jon Moxley, Darby Allin, Swerve Strickland, Will Ospreay. Maybe at All Out, you have a six-pack challenge. Guy, I'm cooking. So there we go. Hangman Adam Page to win the AEW World Championship. And then could you imagine in front of that crowd, he opens up the briefcase, takes that title out. We finally see the AEW World Championship in front of this huge crowd at All In. Like, that would be awesome. So let's give him that moment. I think he won for a reason. He's got to be the next guy. If not him, it's obviously going to be Darby at that point. But let's give it to Hangman Adam Page to be the new AEW World Champion in this Texas Death Match. I think it suits him. I know that Mox is a huge deathmatch guy, but let's give Hangman his flowers, man. He's done a great job. One of the greatest storytellers in AEW, and he deserves another title run. All right, guys. I'm beat. That was over half an hour of predictions. 20 matches between the three super cards. Probably more of them to come for, especially for Saturday night's main event, probably. I think Evolution's pretty locked in. We'll probably have a couple more for All In. You can't have a AEW pay-per-view without double-digit matches. So let me know in the comments down below your predictions for all three shows. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. I will see you very soon.